Today, what we were talking about was how you take digital best practices and move them into programmatic TV. And from that perspective, people ask me all the time where Nielsen's role is in programmatic and in digital. And I'm more enthusiastic than ever because, first of all, brand marketers' fundamental needs are really the same as they've been. And in fact, we did a study with the ANA about this. And what you see pretty clearly is that marketers want to know if they've reached the right audiences, whether or not their advertisements have impacted opinion, and if they're actually moving product or getting an ROI on something along the way. And so the bulk of today's talk was talking about how in a world of where TV remains the large reach mechanism, but even that has started to fragment. And as you start seeing programmatic emerge as an entity for buying TV, the question is how can you take the best practices of digital and move that into the traditional world? When I think about programmatic, and everyone has their own definitions, but I think I'd have to start with what I think programmatic is. And it's very, very core. It is a shift. What you're seeing is a shift of dollars that have been transacted directly and very manually to a set of channels which are automated in some fashion. And I think the primary definition of programmatic people usually talk about is automating a buy-sell process. I think that's actually a little bit short-sighted because when you start doing that, there are things that happen which make media buying fundamentally different. And one of them is audience buying as opposed to contextual buying. That one we talked about a lot today because I think that's an area where we, Nielsen, are working with the industry to emerge, figure out how that emerges from an audience perspective. The second one would be machine learning and machine optimization. So rather than a human pulling levers to actually change a campaign in flight, you have systems that are listening and learning and adapting. And the last one is the concept of real-time, dynamic ad insertion and real-time bidding. And I actually think for TV, the infrastructure is not really there to do a lot of that right now, so that's probably the smallest part of it. I would break buying down. You have contextual, then you have audience-based. And with an audience, you have places where you know, which is largely, when you say audience-based, it means devices. You have a device ID of some kind, be it a cookie or a set-top box in this case, and you can append all sorts of other data to it to get some sense of behaviors. And within that, there's devices that are known that you can do matches in, and there are devices that are unknown. For contextual, and where unknown devices are present, what we've been doing is surfacing up our panel data as a way for companies to actually make buys. Contextual, it's always been done this way for those unknown devices. Now you can start using our data to do that as well. In the cases you actually know devices, that's where addressability and audience buying becomes really, really interesting. And you start putting in levels of granularity and ways of dissecting audiences, which would not be done in a typical contextual environment. The thing is, at the end of the day, you still need a few things. You still need to be able to calibrate that data, because there's dirtiness to a lot of it, and like anything, you need a source of truth so you can correct what you see and model it out. The other thing is there needs to be some way to harmonize that, to create one consistent view of the audience across all of it, because it really doesn't do a lot of good if you have 5 different cuts of an audience and planners have to figure out how to tie those together. So by surfacing up our panel data, we've enabled the calibrations, and we've enabled our clients or the platforms like a T-Mobile to actually start creating more of a consistent view of the universe. If you can actually look at the growth of media, media consumption is growing. I think we're consuming more than 11 hours of media a day right now, which is ridiculous. But if you think about the amount of time, certainly me, or I'd guess you probably look at your phones and do all sorts of things on different media types, it's not actually unbelievable. The bulk of that growth has come from mobile. So we're consuming about 2 or more hours of media on a mobile device every day right now, and again, outstanding growth. So when we released mobile OCR, I always say it's like when you have a concert or a sports game, and you have the big gates, and in the gate you have this little door, and every once in a while you open the door and you let someone through into, in this case, a beta program or something, and everyone else wants to go in. That's the way it was. So when we released mobile OCR, we just had a flood of companies coming in because this has been a medium which has been a dark spot. It's been harder, since you didn't have cookies or anything like that, it's been harder to put any kind of profiles on it. And now you actually are illuminating who's actually being viewed. So it's huge. I think it's going to continue to grow.